Hello! Thank you for accessing this online presentation brought to you by University Academic Success Programs Writing Centers at Arizona State University. In this presentation, we will be reviewing some common grammar issues along with some tips for self-revision and some practice slides. This presentation will be covering comma usage, subject and verb agreement, active and passive voice, colon usage, semicolon usage, hyphens, pronouns, prepositions, and verb tenses. Finally, we will share some proofreading strategies to use when revising your writing. Commas are used for several reasons. On this slide, they will be a red color and underlined to stand out in the sentence. They can separate items in lists like I need bread, comma, milk, comma, and butter from the store. They can separate clauses in a sentence like after I went to the store, comma, I went to the movies. Commas can also introduce quotes into your writing, like the example of Nate said, comma, most of this won't be new to you. Read the following sentences out loud and place commas where they should belong. Here are the answers for practicing commas. Each comma is a red color and underlined to make it stand out in the sentence. For sentence 1, the comma goes after today because it is separating the clauses I don't want to go to school today and I want to stay home. In sentence 2, the comma is before the quote because there needs to be a comma before introducing a quotation. In sentence 3, there are two commas. The first goes after paper and the second after pencil. This is because there are 3 items being listed and each comma separates each item in the list. For this slide, the subjects in all sentences will be colored blue and the verbs will be colored red. Subject and verb agreement can vary depending on the context of the sentence, but this slide will have 3 common cases. 1, if the subject is 2 or more nouns or pronouns, the verb will be plural. For example, in the sentence, he and his family are in Chicago this year, he and his family are the subject of the sentence and are colored blue on the slide. The verb is are and is colored red. 2, if the subject is 2 or more nouns or pronouns and they are connected by or nor, the verb will be singular. For example, in the sentence, neither the phone nor the pen is on the table, our subjects are phone and pen, both of which are blue. Since nor connects them, our verb is will be singular and is marked red. 3, if the subject is 1 noun or pronoun, then the verb will be singular. In the sentence, she is my best friend, the subject in blue is she, which is a singular pronoun. This means our verb will also be singular. In this case, the verb is, also marked in red. In writing, it can be easy to write in passive voice. However, in most types of assignments, you will have to write with an active voice. Writing with an active voice means that the subject of the sentence performs the action expressed in the verb. It is direct, vivid, and concise, and will emphasize the subject or actor. For example, the sentence, Jean threw the ball, is an active voice because the subject, Jean, is performing the action, threw. And in the sentence, the orchestra played many instruments, the orchestra is performing the action, played. When writing with a passive voice, it means that the sentence's subject is acted upon by the action of the verb. The emphasis here is on the direct object, or what is being acted upon. So the sentence, the ball was thrown by Jean, is passive because the subject, ball, is being acted upon by the action, was thrown. And the sentence, the instruments were played, is passive because the subject, instruments, are being acted upon by the action, were played. Passive voice can make the sentence too wordy or vague, which is something to be aware of when writing and revising. Active voice is often best for academic writing. However, you should use passive voice if you do not know who performed an action, such as the old photograph was torn into many pieces. If you don't want to mention who was responsible for an action, such as despite the efforts of the journalists, the story was printed too late. Or you want to emphasize the object of the action. Almost a third of the company's money was embezzled. You also may use passive voice in some types of scientific writing. For example, 3 liters of the solution were added to the beaker. A good way to figure out if the sentence is active or passive voice is by inserting the phrase by zombies at the end. If the sentence makes sense with by zombies at the end, such like she was bitten by zombies, then the sentence is passive. But if it bit her by zombies does not make sense, so it is in active voice. Read each sentence on this slide and decide if the sentence is in active or passive voice. Here are the answers to the previous slide. Sentence 1 is in active voice because the subject of the sentence, Jenny, is performing the action played. Sentence 2 is in passive voice because the subject of the sentence, book, is acted upon by the action of the verb was taken. Sentence 3 is in passive voice because the subject of the sentence, groceries, is acted upon by the action of the verb were delivered. Sentence 4 is in active voice because the subject of the sentence, Walt, is performing the action carried. Sentence 5 is in action voice because the subject of the sentence, Arjun, is performing the action gave. And sentence 6 is in passive voice because the subjects of the sentence, Jay and Mariah, are acted upon by the actions of the verb were frightened. On this slide, change the sentences from passive voice to active voice. On this slide, you can see the original sentence on the left and the revision on the right. Sentence 1 should be changed to, the dog chased him. Sentence 2 should be rewritten as, the Rouen kids built the treehouse in the 1940s. Sentence 3 would be, Wren took a vacation for 1 week, in active voice. Sentence 4 is, Buffy slayed the vampire. Sentence 5 should be, the mysterious stranger gave him the money. And finally, sentence 6 is revised to say, the professor will give you instructions. Colons are used for a few reasons. They are used to introduce an item or a series of items when listing an item or listing items one by one, or when a sentence is made up of 2 or more independent clauses and the first clause is explained by the other clause or clauses. These examples will be in the same order as the reasons that they match with on the previous slide. Each colon is read and underlined on the slide to stand out. In the first example, Trish wanted these 3 items, colon, a spatula, olive oil, and a carton of eggs. A colon introduces the series of items that Trish wanted. In the second example, donations should include colon, A, mouthwash, B, toothpaste, C, toothbrushes. There is a list of items formatted so that each item is listed one by one, and a colon introduces them. In the third example, remember the old saying, colon, be careful what you wish for. A colon is used in between 2 independent clauses to expand on the sentence's meaning. Semicolons are mainly used for connecting 2 independent clauses in a sentence. Each semicolon is colored red and underlined on the slide to stand out. For example, in this sentence, some people prefer to use a computer to take notes, semicolon, I prefer a pencil and paper. The semicolon separates the 2 independent clauses. Some people prefer to use a computer to take notes, and I prefer a pencil and paper. Semicolons can also be used to separate items in a list. They are used for more complicated lists or lists with a lot of information. For example, the sentence, they went to 4 different cities on their trip. Boston, Massachusetts, semicolon, Bloomington, Indiana, semicolon, Astoria, Oregon, semicolon, and Mobile, Alabama. In that sentence, there is a lot of information, so it would be a good decision to use semicolons to separate the cities and states instead of commas. On this slide, there are some more examples of how a semicolon can be used. The semicolons are all colored red and underlined. The first example says, I don't need to use a glue gun, semicolon, I gave it to Mabel to use. The second example says, the exchange students arrived, semicolon, they were from Cairo, Egypt, semicolon, Seoul, South Korea, semicolon, and Brussels, Belgium. The third example says, Tom likes to use cherry pie, semicolon, Miles prefers tiramisu. Hyphens can be used to connect 2 words to create an adjective. Examples of this difference are, a long-term paper is defined as a term paper that is long, versus a long-term paper, or a long-term assignment, is an assignment that is completed over a long period of time. Hyphens are also used in certain titles, such as mother-in-law or editor-in-chief. Pronouns are used to replace a noun in a sentence. When using pronouns, they need to agree in number, person, and gender with the antecedent, the noun to which it refers. Let's look at an example. He is a man with only one true talent. They are a man with many talents. Which sentence is correct? Are both examples correct? Is neither example correct? Why or why not? In this case, number 1 is correct because the singular pronoun of he is referring to the singular antecedent man. In number 2, the pronoun they is referring to the antecedent man. The antecedent man is singular, but the pronoun they is plural, thus being incorrect. A preposition is a word such as about, in, or under that introduces a phrase and takes an object. In a prepositional phrase, the preposition clarifies the relationship between the object of the preposition and another in word in the sentence. Prepositional phrases can function as adjectives or adverbs. You should use adjectives with prepositional phrases to form idiomatic phrases, such as accountable for, similar to, correspond to. When writing, you need to be sure you are using the correct verb tense and that there is consistency. Some general tips are to use the regular form of past tense, ed or d, to form the past tense or past participle of regular verbs, but not irregular verbs. Present tense verbs include the s or es ending only with third-person singular subjects. Do not use present tense verbs with I, we, you, or they. And finally, be sure to use verb forms that correspond to the time of the action. The next 3 slides will show you examples of the different tenses so you can spot the difference when reviewing in your writing. This slide reviews examples of present verb tenses: simple present, present perfect, present progressive, and present perfect progressive. Next, we have examples of past verb tenses: simple past, past perfect, past progressive, and past perfect progressive. And finally, here are examples of future verb tenses: simple future, future perfect, future progressive, and future perfect progressive. Trying to spot errors in your writing can be challenging, but here are some strategies for proofreading to help you with that process. First, read your paper from the last line to the first line to solely focus on your sentence grammar and word choice. Second, proofread for one specific type of error at a time. You'll need to read through multiple times, but then you are only focusing on one area for revision each time. Next, read your work out loud to hear how sentences sound. Fourth, go through and circle every punctuation mark and citation, and then go back to evaluate their correctness. And finally, read differently for context, to revise, than how you read to proofread, to spot for errors. This means you may use strategy number 4 to spot grammar or punctuation issues, but then use strategy number 3 to check for how well your paper flows. Thank you for watching this presentation reviewing some common grammar errors. We hope to see you at one of our writing centers soon. To schedule appointments, you can visit one of our writing center's front desks and a staff member will assist you, or you can go on to our website at tutoring.asu.edu.